Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our series of SQL stuff. We're using MySQL and MariaDB for our examples. And today we're going to talk about functions. Now, we have looked at things like functions with stored procedures. So what we're going to see is something that's just a little bit different when you get into the world of functions, but it's a couple of key changes. So let's just start with this. Oops. Let me do this. Spoiler alert, you'll be able to see this. Okay, so we have, with a function, we're going to start with create function. Much like create procedure would be, and we can do create or replace function, much as we did with stored procedures. We can give it a name, same thing we did. We give it some parameters with types. This should look very much like a stored procedure. And then in this case, we get a couple little different things. One, we have this returns, and returns is a data type. So it could be float, integer, varchar, whatever it happens to be. It could be decimals, whatever you want it to be. And that's telling it what this function is going to return. And then you have this command. It's either deterministic or not deterministic. And that says whether or not the same parameters will return the same value. Now, this becomes pretty important when you talk about performance and caching and things like that. This being a good example. If I'm going to call multiply 3 1,000 times, and I have the same, and it's the parameters are 1, 2, 3. Let's just say those are the values, and I know that the answer is the same every time. Then instead of going into this code, I can just store that when I call it with those values, what the solution is, what the result is, and that's going to save a lot of processing time, particularly if you're doing this 1,000 times. So deterministic versus non-deterministic is an important thing to have. Now, by default, it's not deterministic, so you usually don't have to worry about it. Except in the cases where you know that the same parameters are always going to return the same value. And this can be very important, particularly as you get into more complicated functions that are doing lookups or things of that nature, because you can really allow the database to cache and tune itself so that it effectively runs as fast as possible. Now then from there, it's going to be just as we do with a stored procedure. We do a begin and an end. We're going to have a bunch of commands. Now, the difference with a function is that you're going to have this return. And it could be a value. It could be like a variable. Or it could be, as I did in this case, where I just return, since it's multiply 3, I'm just going to return multiplying those 3 numbers together. And so the functions are going to look very much like a stored procedure. The difference between the two is stored procedures don't necessarily return values. Now you do your selects or something like that, whereas a function, the whole point is to call that function return a value. Therefore, if this is a stored procedure, you would say call multiply 3, and since we're decimals, let's just do like 35.8, 82.4 and 4. Okay. That would be, if it was a stored procedure, we'd call that. But it's not, because the call is sort of like along the lines of a select or something like that. Instead, we just do it like this. There's no call in front of it. And so I can do a select. So I can do a select, and then I have this function. And we've seen functions, these are custom ones, but we've seen them built in when we do like a min and a max or concat or things like that. So those functions are there. We're just adding our own. So now if I do select, then as we normally see, I get my, and I could do multiply 3 numbers. I can even do it this way. So multiply three numbers, and I get that. And notice, although it's, this one's a very simple one, but notice that initially this was in 0.001 seconds. This one's actually faster because after you call it the first time. So let's change this up. So I think we'll see that. It's such a fast one in general. Let's do a big number. See, that's going to come in, same thing. It's going to come in super fast. But what's happening is it can store that. So you will typically see the first call will be a little slower, and then after that, it'll have a cached value in some cases, and it'll go faster. In particular, if we're getting into something that it takes a few seconds to build that out. So if we wanted to do, let's see, what did we call that? Well, let's just do it this way. So if we do, what did we have? So if we do like some value, stats. So let's do, we're going to play around with this a little bit. So now we're going to do SumStats, SUM. So we're going to do it this way. So we're going to do SumStats, and it's going to be parameter 1. It's just going to be an integer. And it's going to return an integer. Let's do it that way. This will be deterministic. And from what we want to do here, let's do select sum value 2. From stats limit param. Let's see if this will work. Because normally, we haven't talked about a limit yet. We'll come back to that later, but that's normally going to be. So let's do that first. So if I do select star from stats, I can get my 8 rows back, but I can also do limit 5 and only get 5 rows back. So now let's take this guy. Oop, I need to set my delimiter somewhere up here. Oh, and that's in, put this in my notes. And now we can get rid of that. And let's see if that works. So do source current. Yeah, so it needs a hard number. I wonder if it is it. Let's see if it'll do that. Nope. So I can't do it that. Let's do what was stats? Where we'll do it a little different. ID less than that. Well, wait. That may be a typo. So maybe I can do that. Not allowed to return result set from a function. Oh. My bad. Into let's do declare at result integer into at result. I need to return at result. Let's see if that works. Is that where I'm running into? All right. Let's go look back here where I was playing with variables before. Let's make him result. There we go. Okay. And then I can do select, what was that? SumStats. And let's do it 7. Let's see if it takes a minute. Okay, so it took 0.01. Let's do the same thing. Now it took 0. So again, oh, well, we're not seeing it. Unfortunately, this is not taking long enough. I need a lot more rows. However, it gives you the idea now that we can do this. We can, we can change it up. Oh, this one's given the same value no matter what. Interesting. We may have a bug there where stat ID is less than that, and let's do create or replace. Okay, so it didn't like that. It needed a hard number instead of a value, variable. Oh, and now we're going to see if we call it the first time. Oh, no, because it was deterministic and I already called it. Yeah, it's too close. So I can't, I'm not, and I was looking at, I apologize, I'm looking at how fast it ran. And it doesn't always, it's not a big enough one. If you've got something that runs like a second or two, then I think when you start adding deterministic, then you can do it. You just got to figure out something that takes a while. In our database, we're just not going to have it. So you've already seen, let me skip ahead. So the next thing you can do is you can list functions. And let's show stats functions. Whoop. Let's see. So we have here, actually, it's a show function status. And so we can see this is a little bit complicated, but we can see here that in this database tutorial, we have 2 functions. We have multiply3 and SumStats. The type is a function. And basically you can see who created it. That's my username, and some other stats if you want, and when it was created, when it was modified. Not a whole lot of interesting stuff there, but we can do drop function multiply3, and now we'll see that it doesn't exist anymore. Then we can do drop function SumStats. And now we have no functions anymore. So we can do these just like store procedures. Again, the key here is that now we can do this, whereas you're going to do a call with a store procedure. So you can't do like select, let's see, I don't know if I have a store procedure, but if I do store procedure real quick. So I don't know if I have that cursor example. So let's do that real quick. Let's see if I can cut and paste. Not done like that. It's too long. Okay. So if I put that in here, and then I do call, what did I call that? Cursor example. Then I get that. But I can't do select cursor example. So when I'm doing, so if I do select star from stats, I can't do like select stat ID, comma, cursor example, comma, value 1 from stats. It's going to blow up. But I can do, let's do multiply3. Let's just create multiply. We're going to create one real simple. But I can do things like, that's a very simple one, add 3 that just has one parameter. returns a float, deterministic, return that plus 3. Very simple. And if we go in here, and now if we do source current .SQL, we can come in here and we can do, so we can do value 1, comma, add 3, value 1, and we can put that there, bam. And so we can see here, we're with each number, 1 plus 3 is 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, and we can build that into our select. So now instead of where store procedure is going to do some work, a function is going to do usually a modification to some work based on data. So we can use those within our data as opposed to a store procedure that is sort of encapsulating tasks within data. So that gets us through functions. And hopefully now between store procedures and functions, we've got a good list of things that we can work with to do some pretty complicated logic within our database and within our queries. And that'll wrap this one up. We're going to go ahead and call it a lesson on this one, but we'll come back. We've got plenty more to discuss. And as always, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.